My name is Avery Calder. I'm 32 years old, and I work as an operations analyst, the kind of job where numbers behave better than people. On a Thursday at 7:41 p.m., with my microwave breathing steam into a quiet kitchen, my phone lit up with a group message titled Calder Family. It was from my mother, but it had everyone in it: Dad, my sister Tara, and my Aunt Judith, who never says much unless she's polishing a point. The message was short, tidy, and devastating. We've talked, and we think it's best if you step back from the family for a while. Tara needs space. We all do. The screen held it there like a verdict. 3 sentences, no questions. A moment later, a thumbs-up reaction appeared under the text, as if exile could be confirmed like a package delivery. I read the lines again, this time slower, searching for a word I could grab and argue with. There wasn't one. The microwave beeped. I didn't eat. I put the bowl in the sink and let cold water erase the steam. The apartment felt suddenly larger, like the walls had taken a step back too. My thumb hovered over the keyboard longer than it needed to. I typed only what was true. Understood. I'll step back, from the family fund as well. Then I set the phone face down on the counter and stayed very still, waiting for the sting to pass. It didn't, but a steadier feeling came in behind it, quiet and clear. People always imagine betrayal as loud. In real life, it arrives pre-punctuated, polite as a memo. I wiped the counter, dried my hands, and opened my laptop. The glow was familiar, like a stage light I knew too well. I signed into the account that fed everyone else's lives: Mom's prescriptions, Dad's overdraft patches, Tara's co-pays, and the rides when her car refused to. 5 years of reminders lived there, lined up like obedient soldiers. Everything in order, everything on time, everything mine. I didn't touch a single switch, not yet. I just looked. I let the balances sit on the screen until the truth was plain. They had asked me to step back, and the only way to do it was to move my signature out of their daily weather. My hand rested on the trackpad. The room was so quiet I could hear the refrigerator hum, patient and unconcerned. That was the sound I wanted for my life. If you're still with me, tell me where you're watching from in the comments, your city, your state. I want to know who's out there listening, because the moment after this, the moment a single green switch turns gray, is where everything finally begins. I rested my palm on the trackpad and took one full breath. Then I began. The pharmacy autopay sat first on the list, a small green switch that had been green for so long it felt like furniture. I opened the panel, read the reminder I had written to myself years ago: refill 2 days early, and slid the toggle to gray. The page refreshed. The switch stayed gray. No alarm went off. No siren. Just silence, like a room after company leaves. Next was the utilities bundle: power, water, internet. My name was everywhere, tucked into the fine print like a safety pin. I signed into each account, turned off recurring, and removed my card. Click, confirm, click, confirm. It was mechanical, but it did not feel cold. It felt exact. I kept a notepad beside the laptop and wrote down each step, each confirmation number, the timestamp, the screen name of the person I would be in the morning when questions came. Insurance followed. The auto policy had a habit of re-adding me every 6 months because bundling saved $5, the kind of math that always cost me more later. I clicked through the archive and found the spot where my name had slipped back in like a shadow. I removed it, saved the change, and printed a proof of coverage page with my absence on it. I placed the paper flat on the table to dry. The gas card took longer. Dad always said it was for fuel only, but the statement showed a patio heater purchased in July for a backyard that never hosted me. I stared at the line until the numbers stopped glowing. Then I closed that account entirely and took screenshots of the closure notice. Receipt, date, final balance. The way you put a lid on a jar before winter. Each time a window asked, "Are you sure?" I answered yes. It felt less like pushing someone away, more like bringing myself back inside my own front door. When I reached the cell phone plan, I paused. The family promised they'd take it over in March. The promise had rolled forward every month like a can kicked down a sidewalk. I opened the plan page and removed my card from the backup payment method they swore they never used. Then I took a slow lap through the account and found my number marked as owner. I changed it to user and saved. A small thing, but ownership is made of small things. I created a folder on my desktop and named it Calder Ledger. Inside it, I saved everything: PDFs of final statements, CSVs of transaction histories, screenshots of confirmation pages, a simple index sheet that listed what I had shut off and when. Not for revenge, for memory I could trust. When the last toggle slid to gray, something unclenched beneath my ribs. I sat back and watched the cursor blink in an empty search bar. The apartment noise came back into focus. The hum of the refrigerator, the faint hiss of a neighbor's shower through the wall. The world kept going. I logged into the bank one more time and closed the account that had fed everyone but me. The site made me type a reason into a blank field. I wrote, "Account no longer required," and clicked submit. A blue banner flashed. "Your closure request has been received." I printed the page and slid it under the others. By then the night outside had deepened, a long blue alley between buildings. I washed the single mug in my sink and turned out the kitchen light. The laptop stayed open on the table, casting a square of pale on the wall like a small, obedient moon. At 3:07 a.m., my phone started to rattle on the nightstand. Once, then twice, then again, until the sound became a steady insect wing. 12 missed calls, then 37, then a number that stretched past what the lock screen wanted to show. I let it run. The screen bloomed, dimmed, bloomed again, painting the ceiling in slow pulses. I turned the phone face down and tucked my hands under my pillow. The room went quiet. The switches were gray. I closed my eyes and listened to the stillness take the shape of a life I might recognize. By morning, my phone had learned a new language: panic. The screen showed 89 missed calls, voicemails stacked like storm debris. I listened to the last one first. Dad. Voice thinned out, the way it gets when he's angry and afraid at the same time. "What happened? The bank flagged everything. Are you okay? Why would you, Avery, call me?" It cut off in a scrape of breath. The one before it was Mom, breathy and trembling. "Honey, this is not what we meant. We just needed space for Tara. You didn't have to. The prescriptions. Avery, I'm shaking. Call me back." Then Tara, sharp as glass. "You knew that payment was due. You're cruel." She sent the word again in a text a minute later, as if repeating it could make it true. I set the phone on the counter and made coffee. The kettle clicked and sighed. In the quiet, I opened the laptop and began the work I knew I had to finish if I wanted peace to stick. I returned to every place my name had been temporarily added. Pharmacy portal. I scrolled to the profile page and took my card off the file. Auto insurance. I removed myself as an authorized user and downloaded the updated declarations page. The gas card had a hidden tab for emergency contacts. I deleted my email from it. I made a fresh list in a yellow legal pad: account, change, proof saved, and a small box to mark done. The phone rang again, unknown number. I let it go to voicemail and it turned out to be the pharmacist, voice pulled down to a whisper out of habit. "Hi, Ms. Calder. Calling to confirm a declined card on file for a refill. Would you like to update the payment method?" I called back and kept my tone even. "I won't be managing that account anymore." She paused, softer. "Are they okay?" I looked at my list, at the neat columns I'd made to keep myself steady. "They will be, when they learn to be." Back at the laptop, I opened the utilities bundle to make sure nothing had been resurrected overnight. The internet plan had a buried toggle for restore auto pay on missed bill. I turned it off. The water account kept a backup card behind the scenes. I found it in a help article and cleared it out. At each step, I exported a PDF, dated it, and dropped it into Calder Ledger with names that would make sense to the version of me who might need them later. Eli texted, "You good?" I typed back, "Family bookkeeping update." He sent a single heart, the kind that says, "I hear you without asking you to explain." I put the phone face down and kept going. A banner slid across the top of my laptop. New device login attempt, bank safe portal. The location was unknown. I clicked the alert, denied access, and added two-factor on every account that would allow it. Then I changed the passphrases, the kind of long sentences no one could guess because they weren't really sentences at all, just truths I hadn't said out loud. Tara switched tactics in the afternoon. Another number, a softer voice. "You've always been jealous," she said in a message. "Of what?" I murmured to the empty room. "My own checking account, maybe." I didn't reply. I finished removing my name from the auto policy one last time and emailed myself a copy of the confirmations, blind copying my personal archive. By 2:00 p.m., the calls had slowed. The apartment settled into its regular sounds. I underlined a note at the top of the pad. No more emergency decisions without paperwork. Then I drew a small square next to it, and for the first time in years, I checked it. At 6:58 p.m., I set the laptop on the dining table and squared the stack of documents beside it. Receipts, statements, the index sheet, a yellow tab that said, "Revocations, signed." At 6:59, I clicked the link in Cousin Maya's message, "Casual check-in, 7:00." The browser opened like a curtain, faces tiled into place. Mom sat very straight, her mouth set in a polite line. Dad hovered behind her chair, pacing into and out of frame as if the camera couldn't hold him. Aunt Judith was centered, pearl necklace catching the lamplight, the practiced calm of someone who prefers being right to being kind. Maya offered a tight smile. Tara had tissues in her hand, eyes already shiny. A square labeled Calder family room filled with the rest. Names I knew, shoulders, ceilings, a dogtail passing by. "Hi, honey," Mom said, with that soft tone that meant we were starting in the middle of a conversation I hadn't agreed to. "Let's talk." Dad didn't wait. "You didn't have to cancel the fund, Avery." I kept my voice level. "I didn't cancel it. I closed it. It was in my name, my routing, and my liability." Tara leaned toward her camera. "You've made everything about control. I acted like the person who pays the invoice," I said. "And I stopped." Aunt Judith lifted her chin. "Families need grace, not spreadsheets." I clicked share screen. Calder Ledger SX filled the call. A clean grid, color bands, dates marching in order. I scrolled slowly. Co-pays, urgent care, prescriptions, rent gaps, utility buffers, tire replacements, ride shares at 1:43 a.m. Temporary add-ons that lasted a year. At the top right, a total that didn't blink, $192,380. Maya breathed out. "Wow." Mom's voice thinned. "You've been keeping track." "I've been keeping proof," I said. "So I wouldn't argue with ghosts at 3 a.m. Aunt Judith's smile cooled. "Keeping score is cruel. Keeping proof is survival." Dad stepped into frame, arms folded. "We trusted you." "You trusted my card," I said, "not my boundary." I stopped the share and lifted a clipped set of pages into the camera, tabbed in blue. Joint authorizations, revoked. A red tab. Shared cards, closed. A green tab. Utilities, separated. A white tab. Two-factor added everywhere it belongs. I held up the last sheet. Counsel retained. Dad blinked. You made it legal? I nodded. Love without boundaries becomes debt. The call shifted, quieter. Mom looked down and away, as if searching for a gentler version of the truth under the table. Tara dropped her tissue and picked it up again. Judith's pearls were a bright, hard line. We didn't mean for you to take it this far, Mom said. You told me to step back, I said. I did. My signature stepped back with me. Tara's voice cracked. You didn't have to humiliate us. I didn't, I said. I kept you standing for 5 years. Tonight I'm letting the ground tell the truth. I put the papers down carefully, like they were still warm from a printer. In the corner of my screen, the recording light glowed red, not mine. I didn't mention it. I let the silence work. The grid of faces felt like a jury that had just discovered the evidence was not on their side. We can fix this, Dad said finally, reaching for the old handle. Just turn the automatic things back on. I shook my head. There are no automatic things anymore. A clock on the wall behind Mom ticked into the space between sentences. I clicked Stop Share, closed the spreadsheet on my end, and folded my hands in front of me. This is me stepping back, I said, and staying back. No one spoke. The call held the shape of what used to be a family. Then I clicked Leave Meeting. The next morning, the inbox held a message with no subject, no greeting, just an address I didn't recognize. The sender name meant nothing. The domain looked like a warehouse for things people didn't want traced. There was a single attachment. Calder Wellness, LLC, PDF. I opened it and felt the room tilt. My name sat at the top of a form I had never seen. A neat block of letters that looked legitimate because the font was polite. Under it, a tax ID number tied to the family fund I had closed 2 days earlier. Farther down, a small business loan application for $80,000, a promise to repay, and a signature that tried to be mine and wasn't. It was the kind of forgery that counts on no one looking too closely. I looked closely. Mom and Dad appeared as co-signers. Tara's name surfaced in a contact section, a number I recognized from her emergency-only texts. The pages were ordered, clerk clean, ready for a bank that likes tidy stories. I called the bank and asked for fraud. The woman who answered introduced herself as Carmen, her voice steady, the tone of someone who has heard this before and refuses to be surprised for you. I gave her the application number from the footer, the name of the fake company, the loan amount, my social. She put me on a brief hold that felt like a long hallway. Yes, Ms. Calder, she said when she returned. We see the application. It was flagged as suspicious in underwriting. It's frozen right now while we wait for verification. If the account were still active, I asked, would the funds have cleared? She didn't soften the answer. Most likely, yes. I wrote down her name, the time, the case number she gave me. I thanked her, hung up, and stared at the laptop screen until the edges stopped humming. I called Eli. He picked up on the first ring. I told him the facts without dressing them. The PDF, the forged signature, the tax ID, the number I knew he would hear in his head long after I said it, 80,000. My ex, Nora, still works in bank compliance, he said. Careful, not apologetic. You remember, I can ask her to look, not as a favor to them, as a favor to you. I remember, I said. Please. He called me back that afternoon. She confirmed it, he said. It passed the first screen. The only reason it stuck is because the account they tried to hook it to is closed. I sat very still, the way you do when you realize a window you left open last night is the reason your house is still yours. Then I worked. I created a new folder beside Calder Ledger and named it Fraud Proof Calder. Into it, I saved the email with headers intact, the PDF, screenshots of the metadata, a written timeline from the night of the group text to this morning's call with Carmen. I exported bank notices, added the Zoom invite from Maya, the call log that stacked missed calls at 3:07 a.m., the text where Tara called me cruel. I wrote a plain statement. What happened, when, who was involved, which accounts and numbers, what was closed, what was still vulnerable. I plugged in a flash drive and copied both folders, ledger and fraud proof. I uploaded them to a cloud account under a name no one in my family knows. I sent a sealed copy to my personal email archive and another to Eli, subject line, break glass file. He replied with one word, received. Then I filed reports, bank fraud, with case number noted. A police report, calm and factual, the kind that gets read because it doesn't shout. An identity theft alert with the credit bureaus. A short packet to the IRS theft unit because the tax ID touched my social. Each time I submitted, I saved the confirmation page, printed a copy, and slid it under the others on the table. When it was done, the apartment sounded like itself again. I washed my hands and dried them on a clean towel. The laptop's fan wound down. On the desk, the stack of papers lay cool and square, the edges aligned. I closed the cover and felt the click in my palm. Nothing dramatic, just a hinge doing its job. By nightfall, the messages changed shape. The shouting turned to needling, the needling to shame. A voicemail from Tara arrived first, the kind that starts low and ends with a scrape. "You're cruel," she said, and then again, as if echo could turn an opinion into a verdict. I deleted it without replaying. A text from Aunt Judith came next, prim and tidy. "Families need grace." I typed back, "Grace is not a line of credit," and let the words sit in the window. Then I erased them. I was done teaching definitions to people who had memorized the sound of them without the meaning. The apartment was quiet enough for the refrigerator to be its own metronome. I made tea and walked one more lap through my defenses. Two-factor on, backups copied, passwords new and long. I opened the yellow pad and added a line under the day's check marks. Call lawyer, confirm filings. Then I closed the cover and set the pen on top. My phone lit up with a number I didn't recognize. I almost let it die into voicemail, then answered on the second ring. "Avery, it's Cal. My uncle, Dad's older brother no one invites, the name that only shows up in stories that end with a sigh." "I heard what's going on," he said. His voice had the gravel people get when they stop pretending to be liked. "You all right?" "I'm steady," I said. It was true and new. He blew out a slow breath. "You're not the first, just the first to shut the faucet." I leaned against the counter, eyes on the neat stack of papers by the laptop. "They did this to you?" "Not the exact paperwork," he said, "but the idea. In '99, they had me co-sign the emergency credit line, promised to use it only if the house was on fire. Funny how many small fires a family can find when someone else holds the extinguisher." He laughed once, a hard little sound. "I moved states to stop the bleeding." "They called you ungrateful, didn't they?" I asked. "Ungrateful, disloyal, dramatic," he said. "Pick a label, they tried it on me. It fit until I took it off." We were quiet a beat, the kind of quiet that has content. He let it sit, then said, "Every generation has one who breaks the pattern. Looks like it's you this time." I watched the steam from my cup fade into nothing. "It feels like I'm burning bridges." "You're closing valves," he said. "Let the river find its own banks." I told him briefly about the forged loan, the bank freeze, the folders with their square names. He didn't gasp or fill the air with advice. "Good," he said. "Paper beats story every time." Then softer, "I'm proud of you. No one told me that when I left." My throat went tight in a small, unfamiliar way. "Thank you." "If they push again," he said, "you call me. I'll pick up." We hung up. I set the phone face down and stood in the lamplight, listening to the apartment tell me it was still mine. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt accurate. Another text came in from an unknown number. "We can make this right if you turn things back on." I powered the phone down and slid it into a drawer. The room deepened into that good kind of quiet, the kind that belongs to people who have nothing to hide and nothing left to explain. I wrote one more line on the yellow pad beneath "Call lawyer." "Confirm filings, pattern noted, boundaries hold." Then I turned off the kitchen light and walked to the bedroom, past the square of moonlight on the table, past the closed laptop, past the stack of papers that didn't need me to reread them to stay true. The hinge of the door clicked. The sound was small and complete. A year is a long time when you measure it in quiet. I moved 3 months after the reports were filed, one city over, far enough to change the skyline, close enough to drive back if I ever forgot why I left. The apartment I chose had tall windows and floors that sang a little when you crossed them barefoot. In the mornings, light pooled on the kitchen table like a promise that kept itself. Work came with a steadier pace. Operations still, but at a firm that liked clean systems more than heroics. My calendar turned into a map I could keep. Project stand-ups, vendor calls, a Friday hour labeled simply errands. The noise on my phone narrowed to the normal sounds of a life. Slack pings, bank notifications that were mine alone, a grocery reminder I set for oranges and coffee. Eli and I grew into a routine so easy it felt earned. He'd call on his walk home and talk about the strange poetry of office politics, then ask what I wanted for dinner as if the world were simple enough to answer 5 different ways. Some nights we cooked in my kitchen, quiet but not silent, the kind of quiet where you can hear a spoon knock the pot, and it sounds like company. We didn't rush the future. We talked about spring. I kept the folders, Calder Ledger and fraud-proof Calder, on a flash drive in a shallow drawer next to the tape and the extra pens. I didn't look at them. I didn't have to. Knowing they were there was the point. The calls from unknown numbers faded, then stopped. When a new one popped up, my phone recognized it as a spam risk, and I let the algorithm do the work of saying no. I slept through the night more often than not. On the rare mornings I woke early, I sat by the window and listened to the city warm up, the way a house does when it remembers people live in it. In late October, a message arrived from a number I knew on site but hadn't seen in a year. "I'm in therapy," Tara wrote. "I'm sorry." There was a photo attached, an apartment smaller than mine, bright with cheap light, clean counters, nothing staged. She stood just out of the frame, the camera catching the edge of a plant and a rented stove. I looked at the picture longer than I meant to. It didn't ask me for anything. It didn't promise anything either. I didn't reply, but I didn't block her again. Let the line exist without being a rope. Thanksgiving slid past without ceremony. I spent it with a few friends who were too tired to fly, the kind of gathering where nobody tried to outdo anyone else. We ate in soft sweaters and told uncomplicated stories. When the check came, each of us paid our own. It felt good in a way that didn't need explaining. On Christmas Eve, an email came from Mom. The subject line was a phrase that had worked on me most of my life. Family still means something. Inside was a photo, Mom, Dad, and Tara on a couch I recognized, tree lit behind them, gifts still wrapped. "We miss you. Please come home." There were no details underneath, no ownership of what had happened, no new language to meet me where I lived now. I read it once and closed the window. You can miss a person and still not be safe for them. Both things can be true. New Year's found me at the sink, rinsing vegetables while the news counted down time I didn't owe anyone. I thought of Uncle Cal, of the way he'd said paper beat story every time. I thought of Carmen's flat, kind voice on the line. I thought of Nora forwarding a line that proved a window I closed kept the storm out. I thought most of all of the ordinary days I had earned, the errands, the oranges, the hour between dinner and dishes where nothing needed fixing. In February, Eli slipped a post-it under my mug that read, Move a dresser next month? Not a proposal, a drawer. That was the scale of our future. A dresser now, maybe a lease later, a life measured in the right-sized pieces two people can carry without breaking anything on the stairs. Sometimes I opened the archive on my phone and scrolled back to the group message that started it all. The words looked smaller now, but they hadn't changed. We've talked. Step back. Aunt Judith's silent approval was still pinned beneath it like a museum placard. I left it there. Not to nurse a wound, just to remember that endings can be complete without being dramatic. On the first warm Saturday of the year, I walked past a bakery and stood in line for coffee. The morning had a good weight to it. In my pocket, the phone was still. The window glass held my reflection steady. I bought a loaf for toast and headed home, the bag warm in my hands, the street bright with people who had their own histories and their own boundaries. I pulled my keys from my coat and felt, without thinking, the old relief. Every bill tied to my name was mine, and my life fit the size of my door. I was 2 blocks from home, a loaf of bread warm in my bag, when I saw her leaving the same bakery. Aunt Judith, pearls bright against a winter coat, the perfume I knew from every holiday where I learned to hold my breath. She paused as if the sidewalk narrowed for just the two of us. "Avery," she said, smile thin and practiced. "You look different." "I am," I said. She adjusted the bag in her hand, a careful rattle of tissue. "You could have handled all this privately. We're family." "I did handle it privately," I said. "You didn't like the result." Her mouth tightened. There was no need to make a spectacle. The spreadsheets, the legal talk. Families need grace. I kept my voice even. Grace isn't a blank check. It's a promise you honor. We didn't have that. She glanced past me toward the street, as if expecting applause from a jury only she could see. "Your mother hardly sleeps. Your father, well, you know your father. Tara's trying. She's really trying." "I hope she is," I said. "Trying doesn't need my card." Judith gave a small, disapproving laugh, the kind she saves for people who won't be corrected. "You've always had a talent for making things sound reasonable. But this, closing accounts, consulting lawyers, this was cruelty dressed as order." "Order is what keeps cruelty from hiding," I said. "I kept everyone afloat for 5 years. When I stepped back, I took my signature with me." "For your own peace," she said. "You might think about forgiveness." "I have," I said. "Forgiveness is not access." We stood without speaking while a bus sighed to a stop and moved on. In the window behind her, my reflection held steady beside hers, a simple split screen. She dipped her chin, a little concession that still wasn't one. "You've hurt people who love you." "I stopped paying for a system that hurt all of us," I said. "Love without boundaries becomes debt." "I chose boundaries." Judith pressed her lips into a line, then lifted her bag the way you gather a case file you're done arguing. "Well," she said, "family still means something." "It does," I said. "And it means this: instructions you can follow, or you lose access. That's all it means right now." Her eyes cooled, polished to the same sheen as the pearls. "Good day, Avery." "Good day," I said. I didn't watch her go. I didn't need to. I turned the corner and walked toward my building, the bread still warm through the paper, the morning clean and ordinary. Upstairs, I set the loaf on the counter and opened the window. The city answered in small sounds, bikes on the street, a dog collar, the low music from someone's radio. My phone lay face up on the table, quiet. The folders in the drawer were where I left them, square and patient. Not a threat, not a promise, just a record of what I refused to forget. Later, as dusk folded itself across the rooftops, I carried a chair out to the small balcony and sat with a glass of water, the glass catching the last light. Windows blinked on one by one like a message written slowly across the blocks. I breathed the way you do when no one is listening for weakness. Inside, every bill tied to my name belonged to me. Outside, the city kept its own time. I felt the hinge of the day close exactly where it should, nothing forced, nothing owed. I didn't lose a family. I stopped financing one.